Kate Matthews had always considered herself adventurous when it came to food. At 32, she had sampled street food in Bangkok, eaten raw fish in Tokyo, and even tried haggis in Scotland. But nothing had prepared her for what she would encounter during her solo vacation to the Bahamas in March 2023. The travel brochures had promised crystal-clear waters, white sandy beaches, and authentic island cuisine. Kate, a marketing executive from Chicago, desperately needed this break. Her demanding job had left her exhausted, and her recent breakup with her long-term boyfriend Marcus had shattered her confidence. She booked the trip impulsively after her best friend Sarah suggested she needed to rediscover herself. Nassau International Airport buzzed with tourists wearing colorful shirts and sun hats. Kate stepped off the plane, immediately hit by the warm, humid air that carried hints of salt and tropical flowers. She had never traveled alone internationally before, and a mixture of excitement and nervousness fluttered in her stomach. Her hotel, a mid-range resort called Paradise Cove, sat directly on Cable Beach. The lobby featured local artwork and a small waterfall that created a soothing ambience. Kate checked in quickly, eager to explore. Her room on the fourth floor offered a partial ocean view, and she could hear the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore. After unpacking her suitcase filled with sundresses and swimwear, Kate decided to take a walk along the beach. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Local vendors had set up small stands selling conch shells, handmade jewelry, and various trinkets. The aroma of grilled fish and spices filled the air, making her stomach growl with hunger. She stopped at a beachside restaurant called Coconut Charlie's, drawn by the lively atmosphere and live steel drum music. The server, a cheerful woman named Donna with intricate braids and a bright smile, welcomed Kate warmly. The menu featured typical Caribbean dishes like conch fritters, jerk chicken, and fried plantains. Kate ordered the seafood platter, curious to try authentic Bahamian cuisine. As she waited for her food, Kate noticed how relaxed everyone seemed. Families played in the shallow water, while couples walked hand in hand along the shoreline. For the first time in months, she felt her shoulders drop and her breathing slow down. The stress from work and her personal life seemed to melt away with each crash of the waves. Donna brought out Kate's seafood platter, explaining each item with enthusiasm. The conch fritters were crispy and flavorful, the grilled snapper was perfectly seasoned, and the coconut rice complemented everything beautifully. Kate had always been skeptical about seafood, but these dishes changed her perspective entirely. During her meal, she struck up a conversation with an elderly local fisherman named Thomas who sat at the neighboring table. His weathered hands and sun-darkened skin told stories of decades spent on the water. He spoke passionately about the traditional fishing methods passed down through generations and the various sea creatures found in Bahamian waters. Thomas mentioned something that caught Kate's attention. He talked about special molluscs that local fishermen occasionally discovered in deeper waters near remote islands. These creatures, he explained with a mysterious glint in his eyes, were considered delicacies with unique properties. The locals believed they possessed special qualities that could enhance certain aspects of human experience. Kate's curiosity was immediately piqued. She had always been fascinated by local folklore and traditional beliefs about food. Thomas explained that these mollusks were rare and could only be found during specific tidal conditions. Most tourists never had the opportunity to try them because they were typically reserved for special occasions within the local community. The fisherman's description painted a picture of an ancient tradition where these mollusks were prepared in ceremonial ways. He mentioned that they were believed to have aphrodisiac properties, causing Kate to blush slightly. Thomas chuckled at her reaction, explaining that many cultures throughout history had attributed such qualities to various seafood items. As the evening progressed, Kate found herself completely absorbed in Thomas's stories. He described diving expeditions where he and other fishermen would search for these elusive creatures in underwater caves and coral formations. The mollusks, he said, had distinctive shells with unusual patterns and colors that made them stand out from ordinary sea creatures. Thomas noticed Kate's genuine interest and made an unexpected offer. His nephew Carlos operated a small fishing boat and occasionally took adventurous tourists on specialized excursions to remote areas where these mollusks might be found. It would be a unique cultural experience, he suggested, something that very few visitors ever had the chance to participate in. Kate felt a surge of excitement, mixed with apprehension. This was exactly the kind of spontaneous adventure she had hoped to find on this trip. She had come to the Bahamas to step outside her comfort zone and discover new aspects of herself. Here was an opportunity to experience something truly authentic and extraordinary. The practical side of her mind raised concerns about safety and legitimacy. She was alone in a foreign country, and accepting invitations from strangers went against every travel safety guideline she had ever read. However, Thomas seemed genuine, and Donna vouched for his reputation in the community. The restaurant staff clearly knew and respected him. After much internal debate, Kate decided to at least meet Carlos to learn more about the proposed excursion. Thomas arranged for them to meet the following morning at the small marina near downtown Nassau. He explained that Carlos would show her his boat and discuss the details of what such a trip would involve. That night, Kate returned to her hotel room with her mind racing with possibilities. She stood on her balcony, listening to the ocean and watching the moonlight dance across the water. Part of her couldn't believe she was actually considering such an adventure. The old Kate would have politely declined and stuck to safe, tourist-approved activities. But this trip was supposed to be about change and self-discovery. She had promised herself she would say yes to new experiences and stop letting fear hold her back. The mysterious mollusks represented something symbolic, a chance to taste life fully and embrace the unknown. She called Sarah back in Chicago, needing to share her excitement with someone. Sarah was initially concerned about the safety aspects, but eventually got caught up in Kate's enthusiasm. They talked for over an hour, with Sarah encouraging Kate to trust her instincts while remaining cautious. Before going to bed, Kate researched mollusk traditions and Caribbean cultures online. She discovered that many island societies indeed had historical connections between certain sea creatures and ritualistic practices. The scientific information was limited, but the cultural significance seemed genuine and deeply rooted in local traditions. Sleep came slowly that night as Kate's mind wandered between excitement and nervousness. She thought about Marcus and how he would have immediately dismissed this opportunity as foolish and potentially dangerous. His cautious nature had often frustrated her, and she realized this trip was helping her understand aspects of herself that their relationship had suppressed. The sound of waves outside her window eventually lulled her to sleep, with dreams of mysterious underwater creatures and exotic adventures dancing through her mind. Tomorrow would bring answers about whether this unusual opportunity was worth pursuing, and Kate felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Kate woke up early the next morning, her internal clock still adjusting to the time zone change. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains of her hotel room, and the sound of seagulls could be heard in the distance. She felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness about meeting Carlos and learning more about the mysterious mollusk expedition. After a quick breakfast of fresh fruit and coffee at the hotel restaurant, Kate made her way to the marina that Thomas had described. The downtown Nassau area bustled with early morning activity as vendors set up their stalls and fishing boats prepared for the day's excursions. The marina was smaller than she had expected, with perhaps 20 boats of various sizes moored along wooden docks. She found Carlos exactly where Thomas had said he would be, working on his fishing boat named Island Dreams. Carlos appeared to be in his early 40s, with the same sun-weathered appearance as his Uncle Thomas. His boat was well-maintained, but clearly designed for serious fishing rather than tourist comfort. Nets, tackle boxes, and various equipment covered most of the deck space. Carlos greeted Kate with a warm smile and firm handshake. His English was excellent, spoken with a distinctive Bahamian accent she was beginning to appreciate. He immediately began explaining his background and experience, sensing her need for reassurance about the legitimacy of his operation. He had been fishing these waters for over 20 years, Carlos told her, learning the trade from his father and uncle. His boat was licensed for both commercial fishing and tourist excursions, and he provided Kate with documentation to verify his claims. She felt relieved to see official permits and certifications displayed in a protective plastic folder. Carlos explained that the mollusk hunting expeditions were not regular tourist activities. They required specific weather and tidal conditions that only occurred a few times each month. Kate had arrived during a fortunate window when such conditions were predicted for the following day. The mollusks they would be seeking, Carlos continued, were called Queen's Pearls by the local fishing community. They lived in deep coral formations around uninhabited islands approximately 2 hours from Nassau by boat. These creatures were particularly elusive because they only emerged from their hiding places during certain tidal patterns. Kate listened intently as Carlos described the process. They would travel to the remote location in the early morning, then use diving equipment to search the coral reefs. Carlos was an experienced diver and would handle the actual collection of any mollusks they found. Kate would observe from the boat or snorkel in shallow areas if she was comfortable doing so. The cultural significance of these creatures fascinated Kate even more as Carlos elaborated on the local traditions. For generations, Bahamian fishing families had considered finding Queen's pearls to be extremely fortunate. They were traditionally prepared and consumed during special celebrations like weddings or coming-of-age ceremonies. Carlos mentioned the aphrodisiac reputation with some embarrassment, explaining that this was just one of many properties attributed to the mollusks by local folklore. They were also believed to bring good luck, enhance creativity, and promote spiritual clarity. Different families had different traditions surrounding their preparation and consumption. The scientific explanation, according to Carlos, involved unique minerals and compounds found in these particular mollusks due to their deep water habitat and specific diet. While he couldn't verify any of the traditional claims, he had witnessed people experience unusual effects after consuming properly prepared Queen's pearls. Kate asked about safety considerations, both for the boat trip and for consuming the mollusks. Carlos assured her that the boat excursion followed all standard safety protocols. He carried emergency communication equipment, life jackets, and first aid supplies. Regarding the mollusks themselves, he explained that they were always prepared according to traditional methods that had been safely used for generations. The cost of the expedition was reasonable, considering the specialized nature of the trip and the rarity of the experience. Carlos explained that he only offered these excursions to genuinely interested individuals who showed respect for the cultural traditions involved. Many tourists simply wanted novel experiences to brag about, but he could tell that Kate's interest was more authentic. Kate felt increasingly confident about Carlos's professionalism and knowledge. His passion for preserving local traditions was evident, and he seemed genuinely excited about sharing this unique aspect of Bahamian culture with someone who appreciated its significance. They agreed that Kate would join the expedition the following morning, weather permitting. Carlos would pick her up at the hotel dock at 6 a.m., and they would return by early afternoon. He provided her with a list of items to bring, including sunscreen, a hat, comfortable clothing, and water shoes for walking on coral. After finalizing the arrangements, Carlos offered to show Kate around the marina and introduce her to some of the other local fishermen. She met several colorful characters who shared stories about their experiences on the water. Each person she spoke with confirmed Carlos's reputation as an honest and skilled fisherman. One elderly woman named Miss Ruby, who sold fresh fish at the marina market, pulled Kate aside to share additional information about Queen's pearls. Miss Ruby had grown up in a fishing family and remembered her grandmother preparing these special mollusks for important family occasions. According to Miss Ruby, the proper preparation was crucial for both safety and effectiveness. The mollusks had to be cleaned using specific techniques, then prepared with certain herbs and spices that helped neutralize any potential toxins while enhancing their beneficial properties. She described the traditional preparation as almost ceremonial in nature. Miss Ruby also shared stories about the effects people experienced after consuming queen's pearls. She described heightened sensitivity to touch, enhanced emotional connection with others, and a general sense of euphoria and well-being. These effects typically lasted several hours and were considered beneficial rather than concerning. Kate found these conversations fascinating from an anthropological perspective. She had studied cultural traditions in college and was intrigued by how food played such important roles in various societies. The Queen's pearls seemed to represent a living tradition that connected modern Bahamians with their ancestral heritage. As the day progressed, Kate spent time researching mollusk traditions online and visiting local bookstores to learn more about Bahamian cultural history. She discovered that many Caribbean islands had similar traditions involving special seafood items, suggesting a widespread cultural phenomenon rather than an isolated local belief. That afternoon, Kate treated herself to a spa session at her hotel to relax before the next day's adventure. The massage therapist, a local woman named Grace, was familiar with the Queen's Pearls tradition and shared her own family stories about these special occasions. Grace's grandmother had been known throughout their community for her skill in preparing Queen's pearls. The process involved multiple steps of cleaning, seasoning, and cooking that took most of a day to complete properly. Grace described watching her grandmother work with reverent concentration, treating each step as sacred. The conversation with Grace reinforced Kate's sense that she was about to participate in something genuinely meaningful rather than a tourist gimmick. These traditions were clearly important to local families and had been passed down through generations with careful attention to detail and respect for their significance. That evening, Kate called her parents in Chicago to tell them about her plans. Her mother was predictably concerned about the safety aspects, while her father was curious about the cultural elements. They had raised Kate to be respectful of other cultures, and she felt confident that her approach to this experience honored that upbringing. Kate also spent time that evening writing in her travel journal about her experiences so far. She reflected on how different she felt compared to when she had arrived just 2 days earlier. The combination of being in a beautiful location, meeting interesting people, and having a genuine adventure was already changing her perspective on life. She realized that Marcus would never have supported her participation in such an expedition. His risk-averse nature and skepticism about local traditions would have prevented her from even considering this opportunity. For the first time since their breakup, Kate felt grateful for the freedom to make her own choices without having to justify them to someone else. Sleep came more easily that night, though Kate still felt excitement about the upcoming adventure. She had carefully packed everything Carlos had recommended and set multiple alarms to ensure she wouldn't oversleep. The weather forecast looked favorable for their expedition, and she felt ready to embrace whatever experiences awaited her. As she drifted off to sleep, Kate thought about the courage required to step outside one's comfort zone. This trip was proving to be exactly what she needed to rediscover her sense of adventure and independence. Tomorrow would bring her face to face with one of the most unusual culinary experiences of her life. Kate's alarm sounded at 5:30 in the morning, though she had been awake for the past hour due to excitement and anticipation. She quickly dressed in the comfortable clothing Carlos had recommended and grabbed her packed bag containing sunscreen, water, snacks, and the other items from his list. The hotel lobby was nearly empty at this early hour, with only the night desk clerk and a few maintenance workers present. Kate made her way to the dock behind the hotel, where Carlos had promised to meet her. The early morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of salt water and tropical flowers. Carlos arrived precisely on time, piloting a small motorboat that would transport them to his larger fishing vessel moored in deeper water. He greeted Kate with his characteristic warm smile and helped her into the smaller boat. As they traveled across the calm harbor waters, the sun began to rise, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The fishing boat, Island Dreams, looked more impressive in the early morning light. Carlos had clearly prepared extensively for their expedition, with diving equipment neatly arranged and coolers packed with ice and supplies. Kate noticed several other items she hadn't seen during her previous visit, including what appeared to be traditional cooking implements and various herbs and spices. Once they were aboard the main vessel, Carlos introduced Kate to his assistant for the day, a young man named David who was his nephew and an experienced diver. David had grown up participating in Queen's Pearls expeditions with his family and was excited to share this tradition with someone from outside their community. As they headed toward open water, Carlos explained the planned route to their destination. They would travel southeast toward a cluster of small, uninhabited islands known locally as the Hidden Keys. These islands were surrounded by coral reefs that created perfect habitat for the Queen's Pearls molluscs. The boat ride provided Kate with spectacular views of the Bahamian coastline and crystal-clear waters. She could see tropical fish swimming in the shallow areas and occasionally spotted dolphins in the distance. Carlos and David shared stories about their fishing experiences and pointed out various landmarks along the way. About an hour into the journey, they passed several other fishing boats whose crews waved and called out greetings in the traditional Bahamian manner. Carlos explained that the fishing community was very close-knit, and everyone looked out for each other's safety on the water. This sense of camaraderie made Kate feel more secure about their expedition. As they approached the Hidden Keys, the water changed to an even more brilliant shade of turquoise. The small islands were covered with lush vegetation and surrounded by pristine white sand beaches. Kate had never seen anything so beautiful and felt incredibly fortunate to be experiencing this remote paradise. Carlos navigated carefully through the coral formations, using his extensive knowledge of the area to avoid damaging the delicate ecosystem. He explained that the Queen's Pearls molluscs lived in specific types of coral caves that provided the right conditions for their unique development. David began preparing the diving equipment, while Carlos anchored the boat in a sheltered cove. They explained the diving process to Kate, emphasizing safety protocols and the respectful approach required when searching for the special molluscs. The creatures were not to be disturbed unnecessarily, and only a small number would be collected if any were found. Kate chose to remain on the boat during the actual diving, feeling that snorkeling near the surface was more appropriate for her skill level. She could observe the divers below through the clear water and appreciate the underwater landscape without interfering with their specialized search. Carlos and David disappeared beneath the surface with their diving gear, leaving Kate alone on the boat with instructions to enjoy the peaceful surroundings. She had never experienced such tranquility, surrounded by pristine nature with no signs of human development in any direction. The silence was broken only by gentle waves lapping against the boat and occasional calls from seabirds on the nearby islands. Kate felt a profound sense of connection with a natural environment that she had never experienced in her urban Chicago lifestyle. This moment of solitude allowed her to reflect on the changes occurring in her life. After about 30 minutes, Carlos surfaced with an excited expression and gave Kate a thumbs-up signal. He and David had located a small colony of Queen's Pearls molluscs in a deep coral cave. They had carefully collected 3 specimens, following traditional protocols that ensured the colony's continued health and sustainability. Back on the boat, Carlos showed Kate the molluscs they had found. The creatures were indeed beautiful, with shells displaying iridescent patterns in shades of blue, purple, and silver. They were larger than Kate had expected, roughly the size of her palm, and seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. David began the traditional preparation process, while Carlos shared more details about the cultural significance of their find. Each mollusk would be cleaned and prepared according to methods passed down through generations. The process was both practical and ceremonial, involving specific herbs and spices that enhanced the mollusk's natural properties. Kate watched with fascination as David worked with obvious expertise and reverence. He explained each step of the process, from the initial cleaning to the addition of various seasonings. The herbs included several that Kate recognized, such as thyme and garlic, along with others that were native to the Bahamas and unfamiliar to her. The preparation took over an hour, during which time Kate learned more about the traditional beliefs surrounding Queen's pearls. Carlos explained that consuming them was considered a form of communion with the ocean and its gifts. The effects were believed to be both physical and spiritual, connecting the individual with natural forces. As the preparation neared completion, Carlos asked Kate if she was certain about her decision to try the Queen's pearls. He emphasized that there was no pressure and that many visitors were content simply to observe the traditional process. Kate appreciated his consideration, but felt committed to the full experience. The cooking process filled the boat with an incredible aroma that was unlike anything Kate had ever smelled. The combination of ocean freshness and exotic spices created an almost intoxicating scent that made her mouth water despite her nervousness about what she was about to consume. David served the prepared mollusks on a simple wooden plate, explaining that the traditional presentation was intentionally modest to emphasize the natural qualities of the food rather than elaborate preparation. Each mollusk was opened to reveal tender meat with a pearl-like appearance that justified the creature's common name. Carlos suggested that Kate start with a small portion to gauge her reaction before consuming more. The taste was complex and unlike any seafood she had previously tried. There was an initial oceanic flavor that gradually gave way to the various spices, followed by a subtle sweetness that seemed to intensify as she chewed. The texture was tender but substantial, requiring thorough chewing that allowed the flavors to develop fully in her mouth. Kate found herself savoring each bite more than the last, as the unique combination of tastes created an almost meditative eating experience. About 20 minutes after finishing her first portion, Kate began to notice subtle changes in her perception. Colors seemed more vivid, and she became acutely aware of the gentle motion of the boat and the warmth of the sun on her skin. The sensation was pleasant and gradual rather than sudden or concerning. Carlos and David watched her reaction with interest, but without alarm, clearly familiar with the typical effects of Queen's pearls consumption. They encouraged her to drink plenty of water and to communicate any feelings of discomfort, though they assured her that negative reactions were extremely rare when the mollusks were properly prepared. Kate felt a growing sense of euphoria and connection with her surroundings. The beautiful natural environment seemed to take on an almost magical quality, and she found herself appreciating details she might normally have overlooked. The interplay of sunlight on water, the gentle sounds of the ocean, and the presence of her companions all seemed more significant and meaningful. The effects were subtle enough that Kate never felt out of control or concerned about her safety. Instead, she experienced heightened awareness and appreciation for the present moment. This was exactly the kind of transformative experience she had hoped to find during her solo vacation. As they began the return journey to Nassau, Kate reflected on the significance of what she had just experienced. The combination of cultural education, natural beauty, and unique culinary adventure had created memories that would last a lifetime. She felt grateful to Carlos and David for sharing their traditions with such respect and professionalism. The boat ride back to Nassau provided Kate with ample time to process the unique experience she had just undergone. The effects of the Queen's pearls continued to enhance her sensory perception, making every aspect of the return journey feel more vivid and meaningful than the trip out that morning. Kate found herself noticing details she had missed earlier, such as the intricate patterns of waves created by their boat's wake and the way sunlight filtered through occasional clouds to create moving patches of light and shadow on the water surface. Even the rhythmic sound of the boat's engine seemed to take on an almost musical quality. Carlos and David were excellent companions during this phase of the experience, sharing additional stories about their family traditions and answering Kate's increasingly thoughtful questions about Bahamian culture. They seemed pleased by her genuine interest and respectful approach to learning about their heritage. David told Kate about his grandmother, who had been known throughout their community as an expert in traditional mollusk preparation. She had taught him not only the practical techniques, but also the spiritual aspects of working with these special gifts from the ocean. He described the reverence with which his family approached these traditions. As they traveled across the turquoise waters, Kate experienced a profound sense of connection with the natural environment around her. The ocean, sky, and distant islands seemed to form a unified whole rather than separate elements. This holistic perception was unlike anything she had ever experienced and gave her new appreciation for the traditional beliefs Carlos had described. The enhanced sensory awareness extended to her emotional state as well. Kate felt more open and introspective than usual, leading to insights about her recent life changes and future directions. The stress and anxiety that had driven her to take this vacation seemed distant and manageable from her current perspective. She found herself thinking about Marcus and their relationship with unusual clarity and lack of emotional charge. For the first time since their breakup, Kate could see their incompatibilities clearly without the usual feelings of hurt or anger. She realized that their separation had been necessary for both of their personal growth and happiness. Carlos noticed Kate's contemplative mood and shared some traditional wisdom about how queen's pearls were believed to promote self-reflection and clarity of thought. Many people who consumed them reported gaining new perspectives on personal challenges and life decisions, he explained. The effects were not limited to emotional and spiritual dimensions. Kate also noticed heightened physical sensitivity, particularly to touch and temperature. The ocean breeze felt more pleasant against her skin, and even the texture of the boat's seating seemed more noticeable and comfortable. About halfway through the return journey, they encountered a pod of dolphins swimming near their boat. The dolphins seemed unusually playful and approached closer than Carlos said was typical. Kate watched with wonder as these magnificent creatures performed acrobatic displays just meters from where she sat. David suggested that dolphins were often drawn to boats carrying people who had recently consumed queen's pearls. While this might have been folklore rather than scientific fact, Kate found the timing of their appearance remarkable. The dolphins seemed to acknowledge her presence with an intelligence that felt almost communicative. Kate spent several minutes in what felt like wordless communication with the dolphins, experiencing a sense of connection with these ocean creatures that transcended her usual understanding of human-animal relationships. This experience reinforced the traditional beliefs about queen's pearls, enhancing connection with marine environments. As they continued toward Nassau, Carlos explained that the effects Kate was experiencing would gradually diminish over the next several hours. Most people found the transition to be gentle and natural, leaving them with lasting memories and insights rather than any unpleasant aftermath. The conversation turned to practical matters as they approached Nassau Harbor. Carlos provided Kate with information about traditional aftercare practices, including staying well hydrated and eating light, nutritious foods. He also suggested that she might want to spend some quiet time reflecting on her experience while the effects were still present. Back at the marina, Kate felt profound gratitude toward Carlos and David for sharing such a meaningful cultural tradition with her. The experience had exceeded her expectations in every way, providing not just a unique culinary adventure, but also genuine insights into Bahamian heritage and her own personal journey. She exchanged contact information with both men, hoping to maintain connections with the people who had provided her with such a transformative experience. Carlos mentioned that he occasionally organized similar expeditions for other culturally curious travelers, and Kate promised to recommend his services to anyone seeking authentic Bahamian experiences. The transition back to the hotel environment felt somewhat jarring after the natural setting of the Hidden Keys. Kate noticed how artificial many aspects of the tourist resort seemed compared to the pristine beauty she had just experienced. However, the enhanced perception from the Queen's Pearls helped her appreciate even the resort's landscaping and architecture more fully. In her hotel room, Kate took a long, luxurious shower, finding that the warm water felt incredible against her sensitized skin. She then spent time on her balcony, journaling about the day's experiences while the memories were still fresh and vivid in her mind. The writing process felt more fluid and creative than usual, as if the Queen's Pearls had enhanced her ability to express complex thoughts and emotions in words. Kate found herself writing poetry for the first time in years, capturing her feelings about the ocean, the cultural exchange, and her personal transformation. As evening approached, Kate decided to return to Coconut Charlie's restaurant where she had first met Thomas. She hoped to thank him for facilitating the connection with Carlos and to share her positive experience with him. The enhanced sensory perception made the walk along the beach particularly enjoyable. Thomas was indeed at his usual table, and his face lit up with pleasure when Kate approached to share her story. He listened intently as she described the expedition and her reactions to consuming the Queen's Pearls. His satisfaction was evident as she confirmed that his nephew had provided exactly the type of authentic cultural experience he had promised. Other patrons at the restaurant seemed drawn to Kate's obvious joy and excitement as she recounted her adventure. Several people asked questions about the expedition, and Kate found herself becoming an informal ambassador for this unique aspect of Bahamian culture. The restaurant's atmosphere seemed even more vibrant and welcoming than during her first visit. The steel drum music resonated more deeply. The flavors of her dinner were more complex and satisfying, and the conversations with other diners felt more meaningful and connected. Kate realized that the Queen's Pearls experience was serving as a catalyst for broader changes in how she approached life and relationships. The enhanced openness and connection she was feeling seemed to be attracting positive interactions with everyone she encountered. As the evening progressed, she found herself dancing to the live music with other restaurant guests, something she would normally have been too self-conscious to do. The Queen's Pearls had temporarily dissolved many of her usual inhibitions and social anxieties, allowing her natural personality to express itself more freely. The effects began to gradually subside as the night wore on, but Kate could sense that the insights and perspective she had gained would have lasting impact. She felt fundamentally changed by the experience, more confident in her ability to embrace new challenges and opportunities. Before returning to her hotel, Kate took one final walk along the moonlit beach, reflecting on how much had changed since her arrival in the Bahamas just a few days earlier. The woman walking along the sand that night felt like a more authentic and empowered version of herself than the anxious, heartbroken person who had stepped off the plane. Kate woke up the following morning with a profound sense of clarity and renewal that she hadn't felt in months. While the intense sensory effects of the Queen's Pearls had faded during the night, she retained the emotional and psychological insights that the experience had provided. The woman looking back at her in the bathroom mirror seemed more confident and self-assured than the person who had arrived in the Bahamas just days earlier. Her remaining time in Nassau took on a different quality as Kate approached each experience with the openness and curiosity that the Queen's Pearls expedition had awakened in her. She spent her morning exploring downtown Nassau with fresh eyes, visiting local markets and art galleries that she might have overlooked during a typical tourist visit. At the straw market, Kate engaged in genuine conversations with vendors about their crafts and cultural traditions rather than simply browsing for souvenirs. She purchased several handmade items that would serve as meaningful reminders of her transformative experience rather than generic vacation mementos. One vendor, an elderly woman named Miss Evelyn who created intricate shell jewelry, seemed particularly interested in Kate's story about the Queen's Pearls expedition. Miss Evelyn shared that her own family had participated in similar traditions when she was young, and she was pleased to hear that these customs were still being respectfully shared with visitors. Kate spent considerable time that day, writing in her journal and sending thoughtful messages to friends and family back home. Her communication style felt more authentic and emotionally honest than usual, as if the Queen's Pearls experience had dissolved some of her typical social barriers and pretenses. She called Sarah to share details about her adventure, finding herself able to articulate the profound nature of the experience in ways that helped her friend understand its significance. Sarah was amazed by the transformation she could hear in Kate's voice and expressed excitement about seeing her friend embrace such bold new experiences. The conversation with her parents was equally meaningful, as Kate found herself discussing her future plans and personal goals with unprecedented clarity and conviction. She realized that the Queen's Pearls experience had helped her identify what truly mattered to her versus what she had been pursuing due to external expectations or social pressure. Her final evening in the Bahamas was spent at a small, family-owned restaurant recommended by Carlos, where she was treated as an honorary member of the local community rather than just another tourist. The owners, who were friends of Carlos's family, had heard about her respectful participation in their traditional culture and welcomed her warmly. The meal featured traditional Bahamian dishes prepared with the same care and reverence that had characterized the Queen's Pearls preparation. Kate found herself savoring each bite mindfully, appreciating the cultural heritage and family traditions represented in every recipe. During dinner, she met several other local families who shared stories about their own experiences with traditional foods and cultural practices. Kate felt honored to be included in these conversations and grateful for the authentic connections she was forming with the Bahamian community. The restaurant's owner, Miss Patricia, presented Kate with a small gift before she left, a traditional conch shell that had been blessed according to local customs. Miss Patricia explained that the shell would help Kate maintain her connection with the ocean and the transformative experiences she had undergone during her visit. Kate's final morning in Nassau was spent in quiet reflection on her hotel balcony, watching the sunrise over the Caribbean Sea. She felt profound gratitude for the series of events that had led to her Queen's Pearls experience and the personal growth it had facilitated. The packing process felt symbolic as Kate carefully wrapped her purchases and mementos, each item carrying memories of specific moments and insights from her transformative vacation. She realized that she was returning home as a fundamentally different person than the one who had left Chicago just 1 week earlier. At the airport, Kate encountered Carlos, who was dropping off supplies for another fishing expedition. Their reunion was warm and meaningful, with both expressing gratitude for the authentic cultural exchange they had shared. Carlos mentioned that Kate's respectful approach and genuine interest had made the experience equally meaningful for him and David. Carlos presented Kate with a small package containing dried herbs from the Queen's Pearls preparation, explaining that she could use them to create teas that would help her maintain connection with the experience and its insights. He also provided her with information about sustainable marine conservation efforts that she could support from Chicago. The flight home provided Kate with hours of uninterrupted time to process and integrate her experiences. She found herself writing continuously, capturing not just the events of her vacation, but the profound personal transformations that had occurred. The Queen's Pearls expedition had served as a catalyst for changes that extended far beyond the immediate experience. Kate realized that her willingness to embrace the unknown and trust in the wisdom of local traditions had opened doors to experiences she never could have imagined. The confidence and self-awareness she had gained would influence every aspect of her life moving forward, from her career choices to her approach to relationships. Arriving back in Chicago, Kate felt like she was seeing her hometown through new eyes. The urban environment that had previously felt confining and stressful now seemed full of opportunities for exploration and growth. She was eager to apply the insights from her Bahamian adventure to her daily life. Her first day back at work was markedly different from her pre-vacation routine. Kate approached her projects with enhanced creativity and confidence, drawing on the expanded perspective she had gained through her cultural immersion experience. Colleagues noticed the positive change in her demeanor and energy level immediately. The breakup with Marcus, which had seemed devastating before her trip, now felt like a necessary and positive development. Kate could see clearly that their relationship had been limiting her personal growth and preventing her from embracing the kind of adventures and experiences that truly fulfilled her. She began making concrete plans to incorporate more cultural exploration and authentic experiences into her regular life. Kate researched local cultural organizations, cooking classes, and travel opportunities that would allow her to continue the personal growth journey that had begun with the Queen's Pearls experience. Sarah was amazed by the transformation in her friend and eagerly listened to detailed accounts of the entire Bahamian adventure. Kate's experience inspired Sarah to plan her own solo travel adventure, recognizing the profound benefits of stepping outside one's comfort zone and embracing unknown experiences. Kate also began sharing her story selectively with other friends and colleagues who expressed interest in authentic travel experiences. She was careful to emphasize the importance of approaching such opportunities with respect and genuine cultural curiosity rather than simply seeking novel experiences to collect. The herbs that Carlos had given her became part of Kate's weekly routine, as she prepared traditional teas that helped her maintain connection with the insights and perspective she had gained. These quiet moments of reflection served as regular reminders of the person she had discovered herself to be in the Bahamas. 3 months after returning from her vacation, Kate made the decision to change career directions, pursuing opportunities that would allow her to travel and engage with diverse cultures professionally. The confidence and self-awareness gained from the Queen's Pearls experience had given her the courage to prioritize personal fulfillment over conventional success metrics. She maintained regular contact with Carlos and his family, following their fishing expeditions and marine conservation efforts through social media and occasional phone calls. Kate also began supporting several Bahamian cultural preservation organizations, wanting to give back to the community that had provided her with such transformative experiences. A year later, Kate returned to the Bahamas for a longer visit, this time bringing Sarah along to experience some of the cultural traditions that had been so meaningful during her first trip. She was welcomed back as a member of the extended community rather than a tourist, a recognition that felt deeply meaningful and validating. The Queen's Pearls experience had fundamentally changed Kate's approach to life, relationships, and personal growth. What had begun as an impulsive response to a difficult period in her life had evolved into an ongoing commitment to authenticity, cultural curiosity, and openness to transformation. The shy, anxious woman who had boarded the plane to Nassau had been replaced by someone willing to embrace uncertainty and trust in the wisdom of experiences that lay outside her comfort zone.